Welcome to the Explainer. You know, in the pharma world, just one tiny software bug can lead to some really huge problems. So today, we're going to dig into the framework that's all about stopping that from ever happening, GAMP 5.
You've probably heard this phrase before, right? If it isn't documented, it didn't happen. Well, in the super-regulated world of pharma, this isn't just a saying, it's everything. It's the whole idea behind something called computer system validation. It's all about building trust and making sure every single thing that happens in a system can be tracked, proven, and defended.
All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with why this all matters in the first place. Then we'll get into the risk-based approach, talk about the different GAMP 5 software categories, dive into the 3 Qs of testing, and wrap up with what this all really means beyond just a checklist.
Okay, first up, why do we even care so much about validating computer systems in life sciences? I mean, what's the big deal? Well, it really all boils down to one thing: trust. We have to have absolute, rock-solid trust in the systems that are used to create our medicines.
So, what is computer system validation, or CSV, really? At its heart, it's just the process of creating documented proof. Proof that your software does exactly what you say it does, and it does it consistently, every single time you run it. And you can imagine, right? When patient safety is at stake, that kind of consistency isn't just nice to have, it's completely non-negotiable.
And let's be clear, the stakes here are huge. We're not just talking about getting into trouble with regulators, like getting an FDA 483. That's basically a notice that an inspector found problems, or even a formal warning letter. The real issue, the most important thing, is that a failure here could compromise the safety and quality of a medical product, and that can have devastating consequences. Plus, it's all about making sure the data, the very data that drives every single decision, is something you can actually count on.
And that guarantee of data integrity? It all comes back to this principle called ALCOA Plus. It's a great acronym that helps us make sure our data is totally trustworthy. Think about it. Is the data attributable? Do we know who did what when? Is it legible? Was it recorded contemporaneously, as it happened? Is it the original record? And of course, is it accurate? The little plus sign at the end just adds a few more checks, like making sure the data is also complete, consistent, and always available.
Okay, so how in the world do you actually manage all of this? The modern way of thinking isn't just test everything all the time. That's not efficient. It's about a much smarter philosophy. Figuring out what the right things to test are, and putting the right amount of effort into testing them, all based on risk.
And that philosophy is perfectly captured in his framework called GAMP 5. Now here's a really key point. GAMP 5 isn't a law. You won't find it in the Code of Federal Regulations. Think of it more as a set of globally recognized best practices, or guidelines. It's like a common language that the whole industry uses to meet those strict regulatory requirements in a way that's actually logical and efficient.
And these 5 concepts really get to the heart of that philosophy. GAMP 5 pushes us away from a rigid, one-size-fits-all mindset. Instead, it's all about a more flexible approach. It's about really understanding your product and process, looking at the system's entire life cycle, and using a science-based approach to risk. That way, you can focus your energy and your validation efforts where they matter most, on patient safety, product quality, and data integrity.
So that all sounds great in theory, but how do you actually apply this risk-based approach in the real world? Well, GAMP 5 gives us a super practical blueprint for that. It breaks software down into different categories based on how complex it is and how much risk is involved. In that category, it tells you exactly how to approach your validation.
So here's a quick look at the 4 main software categories. You can see it starts with basic stuff like the operating system and goes all the way up to completely custom-built software. And the pattern here is really simple to see. The further down the table you go, the higher the risk and the more validation work you're going to have to do.
All right, let's just quickly run through these. First up, Category 1. This is the lowest risk stuff. It's the foundational platform your other systems run on. Think Windows or an Oracle database. You're not changing it, you're just using it. So the validation is super light. Basically, just document what version you have and make sure it's installed right.
Next is Category 3. This is for software you use as is, right off the shelf. A perfect example is the software that runs on a lab instrument, like a chromatograph. You're not touching the code. So your validation is all about proving that its standard built-in functions do what you need them to do for your process.
Okay, now Category 4 is where things start to get a little more complex. We're talking about big, powerful systems like a LIMS, a laboratory information management system.
Here, you're configuring the software to fit your specific lab processes. You're not writing new code, but you are setting up unique workflows, user roles, and rules. And because you've changed how it behaves, you have to do much more testing, focused specifically on your configurations. And that brings us to Category 5, the highest risk of all. This is for software that's been custom-built just for you, from scratch. Maybe you built it in-house, maybe you hired someone. But because that code is completely unique, the responsibility is all on you. You have to validate everything, from the initial design all the way through development and testing, following a full software development lifecycle.
And this slide right here highlights a really critical point, the difference between configuration and customization. It's so important. Configuration, that's Category 4, is just using the tools the software vendor gives you. Customization, Category 5, is actually writing new code. And believe me, mixing these two up is a huge mistake. If you treat a custom app like it's just a configured one, you're going to have massive gaps in your validation, and that means major regulatory risk. Seriously, getting this distinction right from the start is one of the most important parts of the whole process.
Okay, so you figured out your software's category, you've planned out your risk-based approach. Now what? How do you actually do the testing? Let's get into the practical, hands-on part of this.
The whole process is usually structured around something called the V model, and it's a really simple but elegant idea. Imagine a letter V. On the way down the left side, you're defining all your requirements, starting with what the user needs and getting more and more detailed. Then, on the way up the right side, you're doing your testing. Each level of testing on the right directly verifies a level of requirements on the left. It's a great way to make sure that for every single thing you said the system should do, you have a test to prove it does it. No gaps.
And that testing happens in 3 distinct phases, which you'll often hear called the 3 Qs. It's a logical progression. First up is installation qualification, or IQ. This is just a check. Is everything installed correctly? Did we get what we ordered? Simple. Next is operational qualification, or OQ. This is where you test all the functions of the system in a controlled way to make sure they work as designed. And finally, you have performance qualification, or PQ. This is the big one. It's where you prove the system works reliably in your actual day-to-day environment with your people and your processes. Each step builds on the last, giving you more and more confidence that the system is truly fit for purpose. So when you put it all together, the risk assessment, the categories, the 3 Qs of testing, it becomes clear that this whole framework is about so much more than just ticking off boxes on a list to get through an audit. At its heart, GAMP 5 is really a guide for critical thinking. It's meant to push you away from that blind checklist mentality. The whole idea is to use these principles to think intelligently about risk, so you can focus your time and money where it's going to make the biggest difference for product quality and patient safety.
Because in the end, a really solid validation program does way more than just keep you compliant. It builds real, genuine confidence in your systems. It helps create a true culture of quality in your organization. And most importantly of all, it gives you and everyone else the assurance that the products you're making are safe and effective for the patients who are counting on them.
So that really leaves us with one final thought. Take a look at your own operations. Is your validation process just a compliance checkbox you have to get through? Or is it something more, a real driver of quality and confidence? Because how you answer that question, well, that really says everything about the true value of your approach.